Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Baumhauer's Victory Grill here in Tuscaloosa, the Nick Saban Show on the eve of the first ever meeting between the Tide and the Bulldogs of Citadel. It's one of those triple option teams, so you better keep your eye on the football because they are a tough bunch to diagnose. Remember a few years ago, Bama played Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern rolled up some yardage on the Crimson Tide. It's a very difficult offense to deal with, and we'll talk about that when the coach joins us here in just a bit. I'm Eli Gold, joined by the sports director of WBRC Fox 6 in Birmingham, Rick Carley. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, and I'm noticing the size of that ring, Eli. That's as big as a toaster.
The university has been kind ever since when I started working with them, and Bama won the national title in '92 under Coach Stallings. They have always included the broadcast crew when giving out championship rings. Not every university does that. I've talked to many broadcasters across the country who call different championships for their respective schools, and they weren't included. So this was nice. But you're right, the championship rings have gotten larger and larger. The '92 ring in its day was bling. Man, that was bling. And it can now almost fit through this one. That's how they have changed. Talk to me about what's going on in your world. You've been 30 years behind the microphones at Fox 6 in Birmingham. How has that been different than your time in New England, than your time in Jacksonville, Florida? This is a unique sports market, isn't it?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's a great market. And people don't realize that while Birmingham might not be the size of an Atlanta, your hometown of New York, L.A., it is a great sports market. And Alabama football aside, with the high school football, you had in Auburn, you had in UAB, you had in college football everywhere, good college basketball, NASCAR racing, as you well know.
Sure.
Even hockey now. I mean, it is just a fantastic market. It served me well. Look, I came in 1989. Again, I was talking to you about that a moment ago and thought, well, I'll be here 3 years, right?
Yeah.
We're off to Sports Center. We're going to go. And son of a gun, if these, I'm not smitten by the people in this state and the sports in this state, and my wife goes to law school, and then we have a kid, and then we buy a house, and life happens, and all of a sudden you're here for 30 years, and the folks at Fox 6 are great to you, and they sign you again and again, and you get this high school football show rolling.
Sure.
And so it's been very rewarding for me. It's just been a great stay. Raised my kids here, and it's been a very blessed deal for me.
Coach Saban making his way into the restaurant. What kind of coverage does Fox 6 have in store next week with the Iron Bowl? Wall to wall?
A lot, wall to wall. Iron Bowl, you can't get enough coverage of the Iron Bowl, and that's all you have to say. Alabama, again, playing host. Should be interesting, and while most point to an Alabama win, you don't want to go there yet, especially with this man coming in. You want to take it day by day.
Well, I'll tell
and
you,
assess it as you go.
The Citadel is going to be tough enough with that unique offense. Coach, good to see you. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I am well. We were just talking before you got here. People talk about the Citadel, they ho-hum stuff. I remember that game against Georgia Southern. I'm still trying to follow the football on some of those plays. Lord, that's a difficult offense to have to diagnose on the defensive side of things, isn't it?
Well, I think back in time when a lot of people ran the option, players were used to the point of attack changing on defense as the play progressed, like dive, quarterback pitch, and that just doesn't exist, in much football at all. The Georgia Tech offense, the way Navy runs, Air Force, Army, all those offenses are very similar in some ways. So this is a real challenge, and there's nothing that we've done all year long that can prepare your players to play against it. You have to get ready this week. The other challenge is to get a good picture in practice of the offense from the scout team, because it's hard to simulate the speed, at which they operate. So then the game comes and the players get caught off guard a little bit. But we've had kind of a good week, and in a way it's been a new challenge, and everybody's kind of looked at it that way, and we worked hard, and I think we've improved every day, so we'll see where we're at.
We'll talk more about that as we go. Of course, Rick Carley seated here between us from Fox 6 in Birmingham, and you're up.
I want to take you back 50 years, and we don't want to date Miss Terry or you, but if a lot of folks may not remember or know that it was 50 years, perhaps this month, that a quarterback named Nick Saban in Monongah, West Virginia, led his team to the high school state championships. Earl Keevers fed you salt tablets, not a lot of water. You had Kerry, Tom, some great athletes to get the ball to. You won it all. My question, how does that state championship in high school compare to those you won in college? And what did you take from that first championship, or one of the first championships you won, to where you are today, and how has it helped you since then?
Well, that's a lot of questions.
Well,
But I do think that, first of all, anytime you win a championship, and that championship with that team and that group of guys means just as much to me in terms of what we accomplished at that time. And I haven't been back home for a long time, but there used to be a sign up that said 1968 state champs when you came into town, and that always made me feel good, you know, even 40 or 50 years later. So, and there was actually 6 guys from home that were at the last game, at the Mississippi State game, some of them on that team. So, you know, when you win a championship here, a championship there, you know, there's sort of this special bond that you always have because, you know, everybody has to buy into the principles and values of the organization, the standard that you have to play to day in and day out, work to day in and day out, prepare to every day. And you develop a lot of togetherness and respect, you know, for each other for having done that. You also have to overcome adversity throughout the season. So there's a lot of respect and mutual respect that you gain with a group of people, and you never really forget that because it's kind of hard to get it, you know. I mean, how many people out there now that are listening, how many times do you get that in your life? You know, I feel very fortunate that we've had a chance to win several championships, and I feel the same way about every one of those teams.
As a matter of fact, it's funny, we're sitting here and on the TV screen is a game coming tonight from Kent State. So you're surrounded by memories and history, no doubt about that. Coach, we've got Peewee on the phone. As per usual, our first caller of the night, brought to you by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig. To know what's below, call 811 or visit al811.com. Peewee, you keeping warm down there in Grand Bay?
Trying to, Eli.
I hear you.
All right, Peewee, what's going on tonight?
Well, Coach, you know, you have spoken a lot this week about the internal challenges that need to be done by not only the individual players, but the player groups, the offense, defense, all on their own. I was just wondering how they have responded to that challenge, and what have you seen from them for them, not only for preparing this game, but moving forward for the end of the season.
Right. Well, I think that, you know, the players have been pretty good this week, actually. You know, we didn't really set out to do what we wanted to do in the last game. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in that. We got emotionally and physically challenged in the game, especially on offense. We scored early 2 times in a row. Sometimes when that happens, you think things are going to be easy. And then things got really hard. And, you know, so I don't know if we responded in the game like I would like for us to. So those are the lessons that we'd like to learn. And, you know, one of the analogies I used, which I may have already told this story, but if you ever go to the championship fight and you see 2 guys fighting for the championship, you know, they didn't get there if they couldn't take a punch. Somewhere along the line, those guys that are fighting for the championship got clocked somewhere along the line. And it doesn't mean they lost the fight. It just means they had to respond, you know, to a challenge. They had to respond and overcome adversity, you know, in the game. And I think that's something that kind of woke our offense up a little bit. You know, things have gone really easily for us most of the year this year in terms of scoring points, getting ahead in games. And, you know, sometimes you get a little lax. You don't pay attention to detail. You don't play with the same discipline. You don't finish things the same way. You take things for granted. And, you know, I think that our guys responded really well this week because we have practiced a little better, and hopefully we'll play a little better in this game because of it.
Coach, I want to talk about the Citadel again just a bit, as they've got a quarterback who's physically different than Fitzgerald. But here's a kid who against Samford ran for 217 yards. Against Western Carolina, he ran for 188. And I'm not going to pretend that's an SEC setting, I don't care who you are, where you're playing. You put up those kind of numbers. This guy must be something special. Brandon Rainey.
Well, I think the most interesting thing that people overlook about this offense that we're playing against, these guys have outscored their opponent like 61-3 or something like that in the last couple games.
Yep.
In the second half. And I think what they do basically is just like in the Stanford game, since it's an Alabama team, they played them really, really well in the first half. Where these guys have their formations, they have their multiples, they know what they want to run against whatever you're playing. Well, there's only a limited amount of things that you can play because you don't have that much time to practice against it.
Yeah.
So you can't have 100 different defenses because you can't practice them all against all the plays that they have. And then they start picking, okay, this is how we can attack these guys. And they start running the same plays over and over and over. Like they ran a speed option week against, Stanford, I don't know how many times, all right, in the game, and the quarterback kept running for yards, more yards, and they got back in the game and actually came back and won the game. So it's really important, I think, that as they adjust in the game, you can adjust with them, but that's because they know what they do, they know what they should do against every front and every coverage, however you're playing, and that they figure it out as the game goes on, because they don't know how we're going to play them either, because they've never seen us play this.
Sure.
Against this offense.
Sure.
So they don't know whether they're going to play a 3-4, a 4-3, what we're going to play. But as they figure it out, they start trying to take advantage of whatever it is that you're doing. So the key in the game is we got to be able to adjust well, and our players got to adjust to the speed in the game so that we can do that. And this quarterback was a running back, all right? So,
sure.
And he hadn't thrown a lot of passes, and I think he's effective as a passer. The other quarterback who was suspended, who is coming back, is a better passer.
Yeah, they are averaging just 90 yards a game through the air, but you're right. It's just a tough bunch to deal with when you see them as rarely as we do. Coach, we've got visitors here at the restaurant to your right. Good evening, ladies. How are you?
Hi, Coach Saban. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Jan Saint. This is Rosemary Harbison, and we're with the Crimson Ladies, which is over there towards your left in the table from Coleman.
From Coleman.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember you all.
Of course, this is our 6th year to be here or to come down to the Hey Coach show, and we just really enjoy it. We love doing our fundraisers for Nick's Kids Foundation, and we are just so proud of the foundation that you and Miss Terry have made very big. And to help those kids, and so we're just so thankful for you. And the question that I have is, with this cold weather that we're having, is that making any kind of difference of preparation for the game this weekend, or do you go about the same way? I'm sure you may be inside instead of outside. I don't know, but is that a difference?
Well, we would have gone outside if it wasn't raining, but it rained really bad, Tuesday and Wednesday both. We always go inside on Thursday because we like to practice with noise, whether it's at home for the defense, on the road for the offense. So it doesn't really affect anything because we're so used to practicing inside, it doesn't really matter whether we practice in or practice out. What I'm always really concerned about is whether the weather going to be like on Saturday. And it's supposed to be a little nicer on Saturday. It's not supposed to rain, but we would take things like we had some wet ball practice this week, even though we were practicing inside. The players had to practice the wet ball. So they got used to throwing it, catching it, running with it, and all that type of thing, just in case it rains. So we do that on occasion. But it really didn't affect our preparation other than we're going to play outside, and we practiced inside all week. But I think it's going to be a little nicer on Saturday. But I want to let you all know, every one of you ladies, that we really appreciate all that you do. And I promise you that we'll put whatever you've done to very good use to help somebody have a chance to be more successful, better quality of life, or create some opportunity for somebody to have a chance to improve their quality of life.
We held our first golf tournament this past summer.
Oh, you did?
We did, and so we hope to make it bigger and better every year. So, yeah.
We
So
certainly appreciate that.
That's something, yeah. And this is our check that we'd like to present to you.
This year, we're happy to present a check for $3,000 to Nick's Kids.
Well,
Wow, that's
fantastic.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
That is wonderful.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to take a picture with you.
That's the stuff that makes it, not that it's all worthwhile, but it's not always the big corporations or the uber wealthy. It's the few dollars that add up to $3,000 or so. That's what makes it special.
Well, it certainly is special, but we can do a lot of good with something like this, and we certainly appreciate your effort. And you know, it really makes me feel good to be able to do something for somebody else. And you all have done something that will really be good for somebody else.
Tua claps his hand, handoff, big hole, Damian Harris, touchdown Alabama. Touchdown for the Crimson Tide on a 1-yard run, and the Tide takes all of 4 minutes. Yep, the Crimson Tide scores often and early, and that was great to see right there. Of course, Josh Jacobs with a rushing touchdown, a pass receiving touchdown, and so many. It's really been something to watch, Rick Carley, to see this team this season. And then, you know, when you're having to talk about them, we're calling the game live. It just makes it a whole lot easier.
Remember years ago when, say, Mike Tyson was in his prime, and when that bell rang to start the first round, you didn't want to turn away because you might miss something.
Exactly.
I feel that way when I think of the Bama offense. Look, I mean, is Tua going to go deep to Judy in the first play of the game? And in years past, perhaps that wasn't the case. But this offense really makes this team and this whole squad must-see TV. It's just a great time to watch.
It really, and you know, on top of everything else, they're just the nicest guys. Some of these young men are just some of the nicest folks you ever want to deal with. The coach joining us again, and before we get your next question, Rick, Coach, how about the nice honor, Irv Smith named as one of the 8 semifinalists for the John Mackey Award. That came down today. Good to see.
Well, absolutely. Irv's had a really good year for us, and he's made a lot of progress and made tremendous improvement because he's a hard worker and he's got a great attitude. And he's been a real positive addition to the offense, and he's been very productive. So it's always great to see our players get recognized, you know, with some of these awards.
Definitely. Rick, jump on in.
You know, last week in Birmingham, I had the pleasure of emceeing a luncheon with Leanne Peewee of Blindside fame, and you know her well, and she shared the story with me that back when you were the LSU football coach, she asked you to go up to Memphis to check out her son, Michael Orr. He hadn't played much football at that point in his life. He was a sophomore, junior in high school, and she wanted you to check him out. According to Leanne, you walked into the gym, looked at Michael for 10 minutes, came off the basketball court and says, I could offer that kid a football scholarship right now. My question is, you remember the story, and how in the world does a football coach like you, as talented as you are, recognize a guy playing basketball? How could he be such a great football player in your mind?
Well, you know, that Leanne, as you mentioned, who was Sandra Bullock on the Blind Side, because that's who this movie was about. I don't think you could recruit and not have a lot of memories about the recruiting because of who she was. And I'm talking about in a good way. She's very involved, very lots of energy. And Sean, her husband, is a good friend. And but anyway, I do remember that. And you know who his high school coach was? Hugh Freeze. That's the first time I ever met Hugh Freeze, who I have a lot of respect for as a coach, playing against him when he was at Ole Miss. So I do remember. I remember the first visit. But I think to answer your question about how do you evaluate talent, when you see big guys, and physical-looking guys, they look the part, and then when you see them, whether it's play basketball or whatever, and you know the guy's a lineman, and he shows that kind of athleticism, you know, ability to change direction, bend, jump, lower body explosion, you know, move around, run up and down the court. You know that the guy has all the physical attributes to play the position that you want him to play. Now, it obviously is a lot easier if you can see him play football. But when you see big guys, because there's not so many of them that are that size, that have that kind of athleticism, you know, you're more willing to take chances without going through the whole evaluation process. So I think that's why I made that statement.
She said, by the way, that when Sandra Bullock ad-libbed the line, boy, he was really handsome. That wasn't in the script. That was an ad-lib by a famous actress, Sandra Bullock.
No, that's not true. That is not true at all. But I will tell you this story about that, and I maybe have told you before, but, you know, they gave me a script for what they wanted me to do in that movie. So everybody says, you know, you did a really good job of acting in that movie. There was no acting at all. all right, because they gave me the script, and I said, look, I did this. All right, so why don't you just let me do what I did?
Sure.
It'd be authentic.
Real life,
right?
yeah.
It'd be real.
Yeah.
And then if you don't like it, I'll use your script. So the guy that was a director said, okay, we'll try that. So I walked in the door, did that. I sat down with the two actors, the little kid and the guy playing the part, and just said what I said when I recruit. And he said, oh, that's good. So we didn't use the script. I didn't have to memorize
That's
anything.
a print right there. There you go. Hey, Coach, following up on last week, we've got a question on the Nick Saban Show blog. Crowbar down in Dothan, he's written in the past. He said, last week on the show, you mentioned that of all the questions you get from NFL GMs, how much did he play as a freshman has never been one of them. Along those lines, what are one or two questions that every NFL GM asks you when they call to talk about one of your former players?
You know, I think that what they really want to know foremost is the intangible things that a player has. You know, what kind of character he has. Is he going to be a good teammate on their team? I think most of them feel like they can make a physical evaluation of a guy.
Sure.
They might want to know, you know, how does he learn? Does he need reps? Can he be a signal caller? Can he affect other people in a positive way? So it's more about the character, who they are, because really that has everything to do with how you're going to sort of develop your talent and reach your full potential. So it's usually more about that part of it, and it's amazing that, you know, the guys that have the right stuff, how well they do when they go on to the league, and some of the other guys who struggle with those types of things, you know, have sort of up and down careers.
Coach, we got a guy here with a Mercedes-Benz shirt on, so he was a natural to get selected to ask a question. Hello, David. Good evening.
Hi, how you guys doing? Coach,
Good,
how you
David.
doing?
Good.
Speaking of character, how do you rely on your captains to hold your their teammates accountable throughout the season, on and off the field?
Well, we do something that's a little different, I guess. We used to, when I first was a head coach a long time ago, I always thought captains were really, really important. So we would elect captains early in the season. And then the captains became the only people on the team who felt they were compelled to have to lead and affect other people and all that. So somewhere along the line, and this was way back, so it's because we've done it this way for a long time, we have a leadership group, and it may be between 10 and 15 guys most of the time. Most of the time somewhere around 12, and they don't have to be seniors. Some of them are juniors, some of them are young players. But they are the people who we have sort of tried to develop leadership in along the way, because we do have leadership seminars to try to teach guys the importance of affecting other people in a positive way, setting a good example, being somebody can emulate, helping other people for their benefit. So from that group, we pick 3 captains for every game, which are different, and they rotate, because I want more people involved on the team to try to affect other people, because I think it's more, leadership's more the power of one. You know, everybody thinks leadership is get up and give a rah-rah speech and affect everybody in the room, but really it's one person affecting one person. All right, 12 people affect one person this week, that's now 24 people, and next week everybody affects somebody else, that's 36 people. So that's more the kind of leadership that we try to instill. So we don't really have captains per se. And then at the end of the season, we sit down and we have the team elect who they think are the captains. All right, so everybody on the leadership group is nominated, and anybody else that they want to nominate, they can, and then everybody gets to vote on who they want or who they think were the best leaders on the team to be captains, which is quite an honor to be captain at the University of Alabama. You know, to have your footprint, handprint, and Denny Chimes, and you know that's pretty special, and our players think it's pretty special as well.
David, thank you. And I don't know if you've ever had a chance to walk around the base of Denny Chimes, but that group of captains, that's a who's who of college ball, of National Football League, of Halls of Fame. It's really a remarkable list. So the coach is saying a mouthful there when he said if you're selected as a permanent captain, you've joined quite a list of luminaries. To the phones we go. Our second caller joins us on the Academy Sports and Outdoors hotline to Greenville, Alabama. Big C is on the phone. Hello, Big C.
Hey, Eli. Coach, how y'all doing?
Good, Big C.
Good.
How are you?
Good, hanging in there. Got a question to ask you. I don't know why I'm sick back, but I still got here. But anyway, the question I want to ask you, Coach, is you don't have this new red shirt rule, and you can play 4 players, up to 4. Games. Players can play up to 4 games. How many people you got that's on the edge of that or might be playing in their 4th game if you're going to play Saturday? Planning to play Saturday. The things go like we hope they do.
Right. Well, we have to make a decision, and we'll make this decision probably tomorrow. We have a list of all the players that how many games they've played. So we do have some guys, 3 or 4 guys that are on the threshold of having played in 4 games. So if we play them in this game, they can't be redshirted. And in some cases, I think maybe it benefits the team. But we have other players that we could play in the game that it would not violate their 4 games and they'd still be able to get redshirted. So, I have a tough time with this because we only have 2 fifth-year seniors on our team right now. Our guys seem to graduate in 3.5 years. Very few of them want to come back for a 5th year. We have a lot of guys that go out early for the draft. We have a lot of guys that play 4 years and go out for the draft. So you talk about compromising a guy's development right now. You got to make sure that he really needs it. Or to me, we'll just go ahead and play him if he's going to be able to play enough that it's going to enhance his development and it will benefit the team. So, we've lost some players, so we've had to play some of these guys. It's hard not to play them because if you don't play them, you got to play somebody else. And then if they get hurt, you say, well, why didn't we just play that guy? So, it's a fine line as to trying to make the right decision, and we're not always right as to how we make that decision. We just got to make it based on the circumstances that we're in right now.
Looking at it from a different angle, a guy like Jerome Ford, who played his games early, had 7 carries, was in for how many other plays, I don't know. How important were those carries and those snaps looking, in his case, to next year and so on?
I don't think there's any question about the fact that this is a good rule for young players to be able to get some playing time, to see what it's like, to know what it's like to prepare for a game, to know how to practice, to get ready to play for a game, to have an opportunity to get that experience is probably invaluable. But he is one of the guys that we'll have to decide on. But it probably won't get decided on in his case because of how much he'll play running back. But he's starting to develop as a guy that could contribute on special teams. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's something that most people overlook. They just say, well, just like you, He had 7 carries. If it had played 72 plays on special teams, you wouldn't even know he played. All right, but that's an important part of the whole team.
Sure.
And playing well as a team. And it really is invaluable for players. And none of them realize it because most of the guys we get don't know how to play on special teams. They were the best player on their team. They never had to play on special teams. But you can't play in the NFL as a backup player unless you're the star player at running back, the number 1 wide receiver. Every other skill player has to play on special teams because you only have 46 guys for the game. So if you don't know how to play on special, we cut guys when I was with Belichick who were better players, better football players, playing defense, but we kept other guys because they were better special teams players, because the guys didn't know how to play on special teams. Because there's a lot to learn on how to play on special teams. Just go out there and run up and down the field. I mean, you got to know how to fit wedges. You got to know how to, fit blocks and finish blocks. You got to know how to pull off clips. You got to know all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into coaching guys how to play on special teams, and it's an invaluable thing for the player himself for his future if he can learn how to do those things. Like Josh Jacobs.
Sure.
Josh Jacobs is one of the best players, and so is Damian Harris. We don't play him as much on special teams, but those 2 guys are the 2 best special teams players, on our team. Minka and Tony Brown. They could have played on every special teams. Ronnie Harrison too. And they did at some point in time in their career, and when they played more, we took them off. Some of the teams and limited to just having them on 2 teams. But Josh Jacobs this year he's on more special teams than one of the best special teams players we have.
And he's great to watch in general, wherever the heck he is out there.
He sure is.
He is something special. Pistol formation. Jacobs, left side, turns the corner, left sideline, bowls over a defender and goes out of bounds at the 1-yard line. Mark McLaurin, the free safety, was absolutely pancaked on that left sideline by Josh Jacobs. Sets up a first and goal from the 1. And, of course, Josh Jacobs goes on and scores 9 rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown on the year. And a junior from Tulsa, Oklahoma, has really had an outstanding season. 79 carries, 381 yards, 10 receptions, 103 yards, and a TD.
And he'll have a touchdown pass this weekend out of the Wildcat.
You never know.
That's our prediction.
That's your prediction? It could well work.
We'll see if that happens.
There's no doubt about it. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, Coach, and the Nick Saban Show, presented by Alpha Insurance. For the best agents in the business, call Alpha. Rick Carley is our special media guest from Channel 6 in Birmingham. Have you had a favorite athlete to interview over the years? Is there somebody who always gave you a great answer if you needed a soundbite or something?
You think Nick Saban and Charles Barkley. I mean, you think those 2 people, whenever you ask them a question, they give you good stuff. Now, as far as somebody who might be intimidating, years ago I was lucky enough to be invited to a party, and I'm sitting there with my wife, and a couple tables over is Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
Now, that's pretty high cotton there, and he did stop and give us some little bit of advice. He was struggling a little bit at that point in his life, but he posed for some pictures. So yeah, there's the intimidating athletes, and then there's the athletes like Coach Saban and Barkley who just consistently give you a good time.
How about the cool factor? I remember interviewing John Wooden, the great UCLA coach, and Eddie Robinson, the great Grambling football coach. And when I was done, I walked away and I said, I just interviewed John Wooden or Eddie Robinson. Did you have a cool factor like that?
Oh, there's so many of them. In the All-Star game in Atlanta years ago, you were able to interview players before the game, so I walked into the Braves clubhouse, and there sat Derek Jeter, and he said, let's spend a few minutes. So that's pretty cool. A guy like Derek Jeter being so nice to me at that point.
The coach is back with us. Rick, why don't you jump in with another question?
I wanted to ask you, Coach, about Quinnen Williams. Here's a Birmingham kid we covered just a few years ago on Sideline. Our high school shows on Friday night, but boy, the lengths that he has come in such a short amount of time, and we've mentioned player development earlier. Can you comment on Quinnen? He is just such a force on the football field, and maybe comment on how quickly he has developed as a player.
Well, I think Q's one of those guys you talk about when you talk about a player has it, and you're talking about the intangibles, the work ethic, the perseverance, smart, intelligent, very instinctive, really enjoys the game. Prepares well. I mean, we always do these signal caller things where we give players assignments every week, and they have to report to the rest of their teammates on Friday night before the game. And it's kind of a scouting report on something, and his is always bird and rabbits, which means is any of the offensive linemen showing run or pass, and he gives the most eloquent report every week.
Really?
Because he's bright, and he figures it out, man. I mean, he really figures it out. And that's how he goes about being a player. That's how he works as a player. That's how he's improved as a player. And he has really played well for us this year.
Coach, a question again from the Nick Saban Show blog. This obviously is nothing I would ever think of doing. But Earl from Fort Payne wants to know, has anybody ever played a prank on you? Was there a player who played a prank on you any time in your career?
Yeah, I think the guy that used to play here, I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to embarrass anybody, that used to do the, sort of impressions of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably as good as any of them.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Earl. We appreciate your writing in. We've got Brenda on the phone down in Mobile, Alabama. Brenda, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Eli and Coach Saban?
Good.
Good.
Brenda.
We're great. What's on your mind?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I have a twofold question, actually. I'd like to know how the coaching staff is addressing the inconsistencies in the kicking game. I was pleasantly surprised about that field goal last week. But, you know, that's just not a given. I'd like to know how y'all are addressing that. And I would also like to throw out maybe an idea, and y'all might do something like this that I just don't know about, but there are a lot of women who might appreciate, like, a coaching, not a coaching, like a football seminar. Like, we know the rules, and we know some of the, to learn the intricacies of the offense and the defense, and some of the things that guys grow up with having played football, but we don't know that.
A little university-sponsored football 101 from the university.
Well, you know,
And race for next kid, because I know a lot of people who would come to that.
okay, Brenda, I think that's a really, really good idea. All right, but I have to tell you about, you know, I get coached by my mom, my Aunt Fran, Miss Terry, my sister Deanie, my Aunt Katie, who just recently passed away, who used to send me a game plan every week and a letter. So I've been coached by all these women who think they know more about the game than I do. So I've never really ever thought it was necessary to have a coaching clinic for women, because I'm always getting coached by them. But now that you mentioned it, I do think that would be a good idea. And I think our coaches would probably enjoy it. I know there are a lot of really good fans that we have that are women who are very interested and ask me some really, really good questions. So I think they're pretty knowledgeable when it comes to football. But, you know, that may be something that we consider in the future. To answer your first questions, when you say inconsistent in the kicking game, you know, I think you have to take two things in the kicking game. You have specialists, which means we have a kicker and a punter. And we have to work on those guys individually to try to improve them. And a lot of it is confidence. And, you know, Joe has been inconsistent as a kicker, no doubt. I think sometimes we've had some inconsistencies with the holder, and we've changed a few times, and then Tua got hurt, so Mac is doing it now, and we're trying to make progress with that. So we do address these things, but this is very similar to a golfer. Anybody out there that's played golf, it's very technical. You have a swing, you have to duplicate it over and over and over, and that consistency is sometimes difficult to manifest, you know, like you want. And I think the guys that we have are very capable. I think right now they struggle with their consistency, which is confidence in their technique and ability to duplicate it over and over and over. But we are working with them the best we can. Same thing with the punter. We changed punters. We had a freshman punter. He's very talented. But in the game, he mishandled the ball some, dropped the ball poorly. So technically he did things that didn't allow him to be successful. So we need to build confidence in his ability to do that. The other guy has been a little more consistent for us. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but we are working through that. And, you know, some of it is we make decisions in recruiting, and we think these guys are pretty good, and we see them in camp, and we work with them. And then how they develop from there sometimes is, you know, you never know. So, but we have confidence in our guys. Now, when you say inconsistencies in the kicking game, you know, our special teams have been really pretty good. Kickoff return has been pretty good. We're ranked really high in punt return. We haven't had any opportunities lately because people don't punt us the ball, you know, anymore. So kickoff coverage has been very good, except for a couple occasions where we had the second team guys in late in the game, and they misfit some things. So the special teams have been pretty good. The specialists have struggled with their consistencies, and I think there's a difference in, you know, those two things.
Hands it off, gets it back on a flea flicker, but he looks and everybody's covered, and down he goes. Bama's Raekwon Davis, with help from Christian Miller, taking down the quarterback for the third sack of the ball game. Oh, Raekwon now with the sack and 4.5 tackles for loss, 36 tackles on the year, helped by Christian Miller, who is the number 10 tackler on the ball club. Time is short as the coach now joins us, so why don't we take one more question from a visitor here at the restaurant. Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir. Hey, Coach, I'd like to talk to you about the Citadel. I know they run a triple option offense, which is different than Alabama sees on a regular basis. How difficult is it to prepare for that type of offense?
Well, we talked about it earlier at the beginning of the show, and it is really, really difficult. First of all, it's hard to get a good look from the scout team. It's totally different than anything that you play against all year long, so the players have very little experience or recall. We don't play really any of the defenses that we play in base defense or anything that we play in nickel defense. They have a lot of formation variables, a lot of really hard play action passes, to try to defend. But I think just in general, the biggest thing is the fact that when you play against option football, which I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, is the point of attack changes as the play progresses from dive, quarterback to pitch. Now, it can be trap option, it could be speed option, it could be dive option, it could be, belly G option. It can be a lot of different blocking schemes which change who has what. And I think you have to be very disciplined to be able to play all those. And when players don't play that, which our guys have not, it is a real, we had a lot of good reps this week, but it is very challenging to get everybody to understand exactly, what they have to do. You got to have really disciplined eye control to play against option football, because if a guy veer blocks, it changes who has the dive, who has the quarterback. If he arc blocks, it changes who has what. So there's a lot of variables in this that is assignment-oriented football, that all 11 guys have to play together so that you have all the parts covered. And that makes it very difficult. Now, I think if you played against it, in the old days, when I say old days, I'm talking about probably 20 years ago, there were lots of teams that ran the wishbone. All right, so when you played against the wishbone, it wasn't like everybody on your team had never played against the wishbone before. But we have a lot of guys on our team at high school or college, they've never played against this offense before. So this is totally new, and you have to understand the concepts of what you're trying to defend before you can actually implement it in terms of what your assignment is and how you want to do it. So it's been a challenging week for us, but I think a good week. Because it's required the players' attention, to be able to go out there and be able to do this together as a group.
Coach, with that, let's bring up your final word for the day. Final word, of course, each week, presented by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, I think that one of the things that I said to the team on Monday was, greatness is always drawn out of you by some kind of a challenge. A lot of successful people here tonight or listening on the radio, you probably were successful because of some challenge that you had. I know one of the things that motivated me when I was a kid was, and I told this story before, I got a D in music class, and my dad made me turn my basketball uniform in and go down in the coal mines and said, this is where you're going to end up if you don't get an education. And that's where everything clicked for me in terms of how important it was to go to school, and if I was going to be able to do anything, sort of special with my life, I was going to have to graduate from school, and I was going to have to be a good student. So, but some challenge in your life, but if you don't challenge yourself and you don't challenge each other when you're on a team, you're always just going to be mediocre, because everybody's got to challenge themselves to be the best version of themselves. Kobe Bryant made an interesting statement, and I don't know if I brought this out in some of the things. I was looking at some of the things that he said when he was here. They asked him, they said, what do you like more, winning? What motivates you more, winning or the fact that you hate losing? He said, neither one. I'm motivated because I want to be the best player that I can be. I want to be the best version of myself. I'm a perfectionist. I work hard every day. I want to be better than I was yesterday. And I know I can never be perfect, and I'll never be a perfectionist, but I certainly want to do everything I can to close the gap. Well, that's an internal challenge that I think, everybody should think about, because it's too easy to be average. It's too easy to be comfortable with doing certain things and not being the best you can be. And I think at this time of the year for our team, our team needs to challenge each other to be the best version of who we are individually and collectively as a team. And it doesn't really matter who we play. So it's not just about winning and losing. And I think in this day and age of football, you get judged on how you win. I mean, I never thought as a coach or as a player that you would ever get judged on how you won. But that's true right now in college football. We have judges that evaluate how you won. That's how you get votes. It's terrible. All right, so everything out there in the world is some kind of external challenge, but really if you want to be good, and we want to be good, and we have a chance to do something significant here in the next 3 games that we have, we need to be the best version of ourselves. We need to improve every week, and we can certainly use the support of our fans to help us do that, since we're going to play these next 2 games at home.
Amen to that.